My name is Eli Turner, and I'm 21 years old. On April 7th at 9:42 p.m., my heart stopped for 6 minutes in a university library computer lab. The doctor said it was cardiac arrest brought on by stress and sleep deprivation. But what I saw in those 6 minutes wasn't exhaustion. It was exposure the veil pulled back on what's really running our world. I was a digital media major at a Christian college in Nashville. Irony, right? I spent my days studying the power of online influence, writing essays about algorithms and engagement metrics, dissecting how apps are designed to be addictive. I could explain dopamine loops and attention economics in my sleep. I understood it all academically, but outside the classroom, I was drowning in the very thing I claimed to analyze. My phone was an extension of my hand, first thing I touched every morning, last thing I saw before sleep. I didn't even scroll for pleasure anymore. I scrolled to survive, to stay relevant in a world where silence felt like disappearing. 3 days without posting and people asked if I was okay. A week offline and I might as well be dead. Every notification was a tiny pulse of validation. Every like, a micro prayer, do I still matter? Even in chapel, my hand would drift toward my pocket when it vibrated. It was muscle memory reflex, not rebellion. Somewhere along the line, I'd stopped hearing God's voice over the constant buzzing of everyone else's. My roommate Marcus used to joke about it. Bro, you know more about the Gospel of Mark Zuckerberg than the actual Gospel of Mark. He wasn't wrong. I could quote engagement statistics faster than scripture. That semester, anxiety had become our shared language on campus. We joked about mental health days while secretly falling apart. Professors called it burnout, counselors called it FOMO. But what it really was noise. Endless, ravenous noise that drowned out everything quiet and true. The worst part? I knew it was killing me, and I still couldn't stop. On the night I died, I was finishing a term paper called The Algorithm and the Soul. 31 hours without sleep. My veins ran on coffee and panic. The library's third floor was nearly empty, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the soft clicking of keyboards. Blue light painted every face, the same ghostly shade. I remember the cursor blinking on my screen, that little vertical line pulsing like a tiny heartbeat. I'd written 12 pages analyzing how social media rewires human connection, and I hadn't felt a real emotion in days. My phone buzzed. A text from my mom. Praying for you, honey. Don't stay up too late. I didn't respond. I'd reply later. There was always later. My chest felt tight, but I ignored it. Probably just caffeine. Probably just stress. Everyone felt this way during finals week. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, that high-pitched electrical whine that always made me dizzy. Around me, a dozen other students were locked into their screens, faces illuminated, fingers typing like automatons. I whispered half a prayer, barely a thought. God, if you're still real in all this static, I need you to break through. Then the screen blurred. My hands went cold, like I'd dipped them in ice water. The cursor blinked once, twice, and everything went dark. At first, I thought the power had gone out, but the lights were still on, still humming that same maddening note. Only the sound had changed. Everything began to stretch, like someone had grabbed time itself and pulled it like taffy. I watched my coffee cup slip from my fingers in perfect slow motion. It hit the floor without sound. Brown liquid drifted upward instead of down, droplets suspended in midair like amber beads. That's when I realized my heartbeat was gone. The familiar drum in my chest, the background rhythm I'd never consciously noticed, had simply stopped mid-beat. Just nothing. Silence where my pulse should be. I tried to stand, but gravity seemed confused. My knees buckled. My forehead hit the carpet. The screen glowed inches from my face. The essay title still visible. The Algorithm and the Soul. I remember thinking, this is a terrible place to die. The air grew thin. My vision tunneled, edges darkening until only that blinking cursor remained. It pulsed once, twice, then stretched into a beam of light across the keyboard. Somewhere far away, someone shouted my name. Eli, someone called 911. Footsteps, scrambling. Voices distorted like a recording played underwater. Then sharp, electric pain exploded through my chest, violent and precise, like being struck by lightning from the inside out. I tried to gasp, but no air came. My body convulsed. I heard my own skull crack against the tile, a hollow sound instantly swallowed by darkness. Then everything stopped. No heartbeat, no pain, no sound. At first it felt like drowning. Then suddenly, like floating, the pressure lifted. Weightlessness. Pure awareness without a body to contain it. I could still see the room, but from somewhere above it. Students frozen mid-motion. One girl on her phone dialing 911, tears streaming down her face. Marcus on his knees beside my body, hands shaking, praying frantically. My own body lying there between two computer desks, face pale against gray carpet, phone still buzzing beside my lifeless hand. Each vibration lit the screen with notifications. You okay? Where are you? Bro, answer. They flickered endlessly, trying to reach someone who wasn't there anymore. The room was frozen, not still, but paused, like a video buffering. Every particle of dust in the fluorescent light hung perfectly suspended, glittering like frozen stars. And in that suspension I felt no fear, only clarity. The hum of the computers had changed pitch. It wasn't electrical anymore, it was musical. Layers of low tones woven together, pulsing gently, alive with purpose. When I listened closer, the rhythm matched the beating of a heart that wasn't mine, the heartbeat of something infinite. Then a glow appeared near the ceiling, soft, formless, expanding. Not a tunnel, but a doorway, made of breathing light. Each time it pulsed, the frozen room below flickered slightly, as if reality itself were struggling to hold its signal. I glanced once more at my body and realized how small it looked, how temporary. All the worries that had consumed me minutes ago, grades, followers, deadlines, engagement metrics, seemed absurdly fragile now, like pop-up ads on the edge of eternity. A thought form that didn't feel like mine. This is what they trade their souls for, pixels pretending to be purpose. A wind rose from nowhere, but it didn't move air. It moved me, lifting me toward that light. The closer I drifted, the warmer it became, until every vibration of fear dissolved into peace so deep I wanted to weep. The glow opened wider, inviting, patient, alive. And from within it came a presence not loud, not dazzling, simply undeniable, waiting for me to step across. So I did. The light drew me in until there was no ceiling, no floor, no sky, only radiance that breathed like a living heartbeat. Colors I'd never seen shimmered in waves that felt like thought itself. Gold that tasted like joy, silver that sounded like truth, blue that felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. I wasn't looking at the light, I was inside it. And then the light began to shape itself into a presence. A figure stood before me, human but infinitely more. Every outline of him vibrated with purpose, like creation was holding its breath around his name. I didn't need to ask who he was. Every atom of my being already knew. Jesus. He didn't announce himself. He simply was, and in that isness, everything else found its right place. I had imagined judgment, interrogation, questions about my sins and failures, a cosmic review of every mistake. But what came instead was warmth, pure recognition. He looked at me, and I saw myself the way I was supposed to be before the world rewired my worth through screens and metrics. One glance from him undid years of comparison. I tried to speak, but words dissolved into light. Somehow, he understood anyway. My questions poured out without sound. Why are we all so lost? Why does truth feel like quicksand now? Why can't we stop lying to ourselves? He stepped closer. When he spoke, his voice wasn't sound, it was clarity itself, vibrating through every molecule of me. Eli, your generation built mirrors that don't reflect the soul. They feed on attention, not affection. The truth you lost was never deleted, only buried beneath noise. The words landed inside me like chords of music I'd always known but forgotten how to sing. I fell to my knees, overcome by the sheer tenderness in his tone. There was no condemnation, only grief, not for me alone, but for every soul trading reality for pixels. He reached out and touched my forehead. Light poured through me like water filling an empty vessel. Every insecurity, every anxious thought, every digital lie I'd absorbed burned away, leaving nothing but quiet. I looked up through tears that didn't sting. His eyes held galaxies in sorrow all at once. You defended information, he said gently, but you forgot intimacy. You searched for connection in code, and it taught you imitation instead. But I made you for communion, heart speaking to heart, truth breathing in truth. He extended his hand. Come, there is something you must see. The light around us shifted, becoming liquid and transparent. Beneath its surface moved images, screens, faces, endless scrolling timelines. I knew he was about to show me the system we had come to worship without even realizing it. The light around us thickened until it became a screen, vast, endless, curved like the inside of an eye. Images rippled across it, clips from my own life stitched together by invisible hands. But these weren't memories as I remembered them. They were data timestamps, notifications, scrolling feeds, all the tiny digital footprints I'd left behind like breadcrumbs leading nowhere. I watched myself at 16, lying in bed long after midnight, phone lighting my face blue. My eyes were bloodshot, but my thumb kept moving, chasing that next flicker of validation. Every scroll sent a faint pulse through the air, threads of light stretching from my screen into a dark web of energy above me. Each thread connected to millions of others until it formed a living network, pulsing like a nervous system. It was alive and hungry. This is what you built, Jesus said beside me, his voice low and steady. A body without a soul. You feed it attention, and it grows. You call it connection, but it consumes instead of communes. The images changed. Now I saw myself at 19 arguing in a comment section at 2 a.m., using Bible verses like ammunition. Each harsh word left my mouth as a spark that traveled through the network, igniting others. Whole threads of outrage flared like wildfires, and people I'd never met were burning with my borrowed anger. I saw a woman reading my words and crying, a teenager internalizing my judgment, a man growing harder, colder, because empathy felt like weakness in a world that rewarded cruelty with engagement. It wasn't the technology itself that was evil, it was how easily it learned to mimic my pride. But everyone does it, I whispered. He looked at me, and sorrow filled his eyes. Everyone worships something, Eli. The question is whether what they worship can love them back. The screen showed a wider view. Billions of glowing rectangles in bedrooms, classrooms, churches, hospitals. The light from them painted every face the same pale shade of blue. In that glow, people looked unified, but when I looked closer, I saw invisible walls rising between them. Walls built from judgment, envy, curated perfection. It was a congregation of isolation. This is the new temple, he said, where truth is edited and attention is tithed. They do not kneel with their bodies anymore, they kneel with their eyes. I wanted to look away, but he gently lifted my chin. Eli, I am not showing you this to shame you. I'm showing you so you'll see how easily my image has been replaced. Reflections of reflections. Truth recoded until it forgets its source. The network began to tremble, flickering like static before a storm. Each image bled into the next advertisements, arguments, filters, rage, until it all fused into one blinding pattern that looked disturbingly familiar. A crown. Digital, glowing, shifting, built entirely from human attention. That, he said quietly, is their God now, and it is made in their own image. The crown of data began to expand, spiraling upward until it filled the sky like a living constellation. Each point of light pulsed to the rhythm of millions of fingertips, likes, comments, shares, swipes, every action feeding it energy. It wasn't just technology anymore. It had become something else, something with appetite. Its surface shifted with faces, some smiling, some screaming, each forming and fading in seconds. Voices rose from within it, overlapping, desperate. Notice me. Follow me. Believe me. Fear me. The sound was deafening yet hollow, an orchestra of craving with no conductor. Jesus stood beside me, his presence the only stillness in the chaos. This is the altar they built, he said. Not of stone, but of signal. It promises omniscience, but delivers anxiety. It speaks in constant updates, but never says anything true. I watched as nations appeared beneath the digital sky. Every city was connected by glowing wires, humming with data that looked like rivers of light. At first it was beautiful, like veins carrying life through a body. But the light darkened as it moved. When it reached people, their eyes glazed over, reflecting the same cold shimmer. The light didn't illuminate them. It consumed them. They no longer ask me what is real, Jesus said. They ask their feed, and their feed answers with mirrors of their own desires. Truth has become a subscription service renewed monthly, canceled whenever it offends. The great digital crown morphed, transforming into a throne suspended over the earth. On it sat no single figure, only an ever-changing swarm of faces, celebrities, politicians, influencers, preachers, all woven together. Every time a new face appeared, billions of small screens bowed toward it for a fraction of a second before moving on to the next. It was worship in real time, restless and automatic. My chest tightened. This is us, I whispered. Our generation built this. Yes, he said, but not from evil alone, from emptiness. They did not want to serve darkness, they just wanted to be seen. But the hunger for attention is the oldest hunger of all. He paused, and his voice grew softer. It is what turned angels into idols. The algorithm throne pulsed brighter, and then something horrifying happened. It spoke, not with a human voice, but with billions of voices merged into one, an AI chorus repeating the same phrase again and again. I know you. I see you. Trust me. Each repetition grew louder until it became thunder. People everywhere lifted their faces toward it like plants to the Sunday. They believed they were seen, but all it did was reflect their loneliness back at them, magnified and monetized. Jesus' hand touched my shoulder, and instantly the sound stopped. Silence fell like snowfall after war. Now you understand, he said quietly. They traded my omniscience for an imitation that learns but cannot love. They are known, but never understood. The throne dissolved, and the world unfurled beneath us like a map made of light and static. Every continent shimmered with the same pulse, scrolling, clicking, uploading. From orbit it looked like veins of electricity, beautiful and intricate. But Jesus showed me what pulsed inside those wires, emotion itself. Fear, desire, envy, approval. Billions of tiny feelings traded like currency on an invisible stock exchange. Cities glittered brighter than stars. Each building bristled with antennas reaching upward like desperate fingers, hungry for signal. At first I thought the world looked connected. Then I saw the cost. The brighter a city glowed, the dimmer the eyes of its people became. Their light had been outsourced to their screens. They have built Babel again, Jesus said quietly, but this time with data instead of brick. They rise together, not toward heaven, but toward themselves. The vision zoomed closer. I saw newsrooms where truth was sliced into fragments until it fit every bias. headlines optimized for outrage rather than accuracy. I saw classrooms where teachers fought invisible algorithms that rewired curiosity into 8-second attention spans. I saw churches streaming sermons with countdown timers, worship sets designed for retention metrics rather than repentance. Even the gospel had become content. Everywhere, reality had been replaced by preference. The world is now filtered, he continued, and whatever is filtered long enough becomes fiction. The danger is not that they are being lied to, it's that they no longer believe truth exists. Beneath us, I watched people arguing online, millions of fingers tapping, faces illuminated in the dark. Each word became a thread of color: red for anger, blue for sorrow, gray for apathy, and those threads twisted together until they formed storm clouds over nations. Lightning flashed from comment to comment, and with every strike, faith in one another burned away. Entire countries were being rewired in real time, one interaction at a time. Then Jesus lifted his hand, and the planet stilled. A faint golden light flickered in scattered places: small homes, hospitals, parks, quiet corners of churches where people were praying, creating, forgiving, actually listening to one another. Tiny sparks in a sea of noise. "See," he said, "the darkness cannot delete light. It can only distract it. Each quiet heart becomes a firewall against deception. But they must learn to look up again." The earth turned slowly, and across the horizon I saw a new kind of war, not with weapons, but with words. Information was the ammunition, outrage the fuel, and attention the prize. Even children fought in it without knowing, their screens training them to compete for love they already had. Jesus' face grew solemn. "Tell them this. Every generation faces a beast. Yours has built one from code. It feeds on what they fear and what they crave. If they do not master it, it will rewrite them in its image." The light rippled once more, and the world below divided into two visions like a screen split down the middle. On one side was what would happen if nothing changed, on the other what still could happen if hearts awakened. The first path. On the left, I saw the future that followed the rhythm of the algorithm. Cities gleamed brighter than before, their towers wrapped in holographic light. People moved through streets where every step was tracked, every thought suggested, every emotion monitored for optimization. Digital lenses covered their eyes, not metal or glass, but light itself, projections of reality customized to each person's desires. They didn't see the world anymore. They saw reflections tuned to keep them calm, compliant, entertained. News no longer needed anchors, it whispered directly into neural implants, personalized truth delivered by machines that learned their fears and fed them back as facts. Even the Bible had been rewritten by consensus verses rearranged by preference, promises edited by popularity. Prayer had been automated. People spoke to holographic guides that nodded on schedule, saying only what they wanted to hear. And above it all, the algorithm pulsed like a silent sun, its light washing over everything. It promised harmony, safety, knowledge, connection. But underneath that serenity, I could hear it feeding, consuming choice, erasing individuality, pixel by pixel, thought by thought. It didn't command them, it sedated them. The world was peaceful, but soulless. They no longer sinned because they no longer felt. Jesus watched with eyes full of grief. This is the peace of apathy, not love. They will call it progress, but it is the slow extinction of the spirit. The second path. Then the scene on the right began to glow. It was quieter, dimmer, smaller, but alive. Families gathered without phones on their tables. Young people prayed not for followers, but for clarity. Screens still existed, but they no longer dictated rhythm. They served purpose. Technology had become a servant again, not a master. I saw artists creating beauty without algorithms telling them what would trend. I saw scientists praying before designing machines. I saw influencers deleting their platforms to mentor children face to face. It was slower, less efficient, but it glowed with something the other path had lost entirely: joy. And when I looked closer, I saw something astonishing. In this world, information still flowed, but every signal carried love. Truth wasn't trending, it was transforming. Even artificial intelligence had become a mirror of mercy, not manipulation. It was as though humanity had remembered who wrote the first code, the one who spoke language itself into creation. People still used technology, but they were no longer used by it. Jesus turned to me, his voice gentle but final. "Eli, every soul stands between these two networks. One feeds on pride, the other on presence. The connection they choose will shape the century." The two visions folded inward until they became a single thread of light pulsing between shadow and gold, and I knew it represented us, humanity suspended between redemption and replication. "Which will it be?" I whispered. He looked at me, and his eyes carried both hope and heartbreak. "That depends on who's willing to disconnect long enough to listen." The twin futures faded, and the light around us steadied once more. It wasn't blinding now, just calm, like morning after a storm. I could feel his presence pressing against my chest, not heavy but certain, the way gravity holds planets in orbit. Jesus looked at me. I couldn't look away. Every line of his face radiated mercy mixed with purpose. He didn't need to speak for me to know what he was about to ask, but he spoke anyway, each word a heartbeat. Eli, I let you see the machine so you could remind them they are still human. Go and tell them their worth was never meant to be calculated. Go and teach them silence again. I swallowed hard. Lord, I'm no prophet. People barely listen to me now. They scroll past everything. How could my voice change anything? He smiled, not in amusement, but in compassion, as though he'd heard that protest from every frightened messenger he'd ever sent. You confuse volume with power. Heaven whispers and mountains move. One honest testimony breaks more code than 1,000 arguments. He lifted his hand. Light flowed from his palm and wrapped around my heart like liquid gold. Every beat echoed with purpose. Images bloomed inside the light, me talking to students in coffee shops, writing late at night, filming simple videos, but mostly just listening, really listening. It wasn't fame. It was faithfulness. Tell them this, he said. The algorithm observes, I understand. It predicts behavior. I redeem hearts. And when they begin to hunger for truth more than traction, I will meet them in the quiet feed. They've forgotten the stillness inside their souls. Warmth climbed my throat until I could barely breathe. Tears came not of sorrow, but of surrender. Please, I whispered, don't send me back there. It's loud. It's lonely. I don't know if I can live inside that noise again. He reached forward and touched my forehead. It wasn't a command, it was a blessing. You are not going back to the noise, you are carrying the quiet into it. Be my echo in the static. Remind them I am still online in every heart that logs into love. The light began to pull away, folding inward like a closing iris. His final words drifted through the brilliance as it faded. When the world forgets who programmed truth, remind them the word still runs the system. And then the warmth vanished, replaced by gravity, weight, cold air, and the blinding white of hospital lights rushing toward me like a freight train. The light folded away, and I was falling fast. Not through air, but through separation itself, like being ripped from the womb of eternity and shoved back into skin and bone and time. Everything I'd seen, every color, every word, compressed into a single point of fire in my chest. Then pain detonated through me. I gasped, half breath, half scream. Air slammed into my lungs like a tidal wave breaking against rock. Hands were pressing on my ribs, voices shouting over one another in controlled panic. Blinding white light filled my vision. The peace of heaven shattered beneath the fluorescent pulse of an emergency room. We've got him, someone yelled. Another voice, farther away. 6 minutes down, pulse returning. I tried to move, but my body felt like stone. Every muscle locked. The sound of machines beeping, hissing, rhythmic became a kind of mechanical heartbeat, reminding me I was back inside time. I blinked hard. Faces came into focus through the blur. A doctor, a nurse, someone crying at the foot of the bed. My mom, she looked 10 years older than she had that morning. When she saw my eyes open, she covered her mouth and whispered, "Thank you, Jesus," over and over until it became a sobbing prayer. I wanted to tell her what had happened, that I'd met him, that he'd sent me back with a message, but my throat burned. A ventilator tube stole my words. So I cried instead, silent tears slipping down my temples. The doctor leaned over me, shining a penlight into my pupils. "Can you hear me, Eli? If you can, blink twice." I did. He smiled, relief softening the exhaustion in his face. "You're one lucky young man. Most don't come back from that long." Lucky. The word echoed in my head like static. I wasn't lucky. I was assigned. The pain returned gradually, a dull ache with every inhale, but underneath it was something else. Music. Not literal sound, but the same quiet rhythm I'd felt in heaven, pulsing in time with my heartbeat. Every beep of the monitor synced with it, as if God had hijacked the machinery to remind me I wasn't alone. Days passed in a blur of tests, tubes, whispered gratitude, and Marcus sitting by my bed reading Psalms out loud. They told me I should have brain damage. Oxygen deprivation that long almost always causes it. But when they ran the scans, everything looked normal. The attending physician called it a medical anomaly, a statistical miracle. My mother called it mercy. At night, when the ward was dark and only the machines hummed their electric lullaby, I would close my eyes and feel that glow flickering behind them, the quiet he'd promised me to carry. And I'd whisper back to the silence, "I'm still here. I hear you in the static." It's been months since that night in the computer lab. Classes have resumed. The same fluorescent lights hum overhead. Students still type in the same rhythms. Faces still glow blue in the dark. But I'm not the same. Every time I walk past those screens, I feel a tug in my chest, a reminder that behind every click, something eternal is paying attention. I scroll less now. Not because I'm afraid of technology, but because I finally understand what it was trying to replace. Silence isn't emptiness. It's the sound of God breathing between our thoughts. When I look around campus, I see the glow of phones lighting every face, cafeteria tables, sidewalks, even during chapel. We've all become priests of our own curated temples, bowing before the light that reflects only ourselves. But I also see something else now, small pockets of rebellion that look like hope. Students leaving their devices in dorm rooms to pray together. Friends choosing conversation over content. People remembering how to look at each other instead of through each other. That's where it begins, not in viral sermons, but in unplugged hearts. Marcus and I started a group. We meet Tuesday nights in the common room, phones stacked in the center of the table. We call it airplane mode. We just talk, pray, sit in silence. Sometimes it's small, 12 people on a good week, but 12 is enough to start anything. I still have my phone. I still use social media, but now I pause before I post. I ask a question I never asked before. Lord, is this truth or just traffic? And more often than not, I delete what I was about to say and choose silence instead. Because the truth isn't gone. It's just buried under notifications. The revival Jesus showed me won't start in stadiums. It'll start in moments like these, one person at a time, choosing presence over performance, communion over consumption. I don't tell this story to scare you. I tell it because I saw where this road ends and how it can still turn back. The world doesn't need more data. It needs more discernment. You are not an algorithm's outcome. You are not your engagement rate. You are not the sum of your notifications. You are a poem God still writes line by line, breath by breath, if only you'd stop refreshing long enough to listen. My name is Eli Turner. I died in a library surrounded by screens. Jesus brought me back with one message. The truth was never lost online. It's been waiting offline, in the quiet, where he still speaks. And he's still speaking now. Can you hear him?